I am a 39-year-old father who sacrificed everything for my daughter Amanda. After my wife died when Amanda was 10, I built my construction business from scratch, working 80-hour weeks to give her the best life possible. When she announced her engagement to Jared, I was thrilled and immediately offered to pay for an extravagant wedding with a $75,000 budget. Little did I know that my generosity would lead to the most painful betrayal of my life. Before I continue this heartbreaking story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below, and please hit that subscribe button if you want to hear how I turned the tables when my own daughter tried to cut me out of her wedding. After my wife Sarah passed away from breast cancer, it was just Amanda and me against the world. I poured everything into being both mother and father to her, while simultaneously building my construction company from nothing. Those early years were tough. I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning to prepare her lunch and breakfast before heading to job sites. Then I would race back to attend her school events before returning to work until midnight. Despite the exhaustion, seeing Amanda thrive made every sacrifice worthwhile. Through her high school years, we maintained an incredibly close relationship. Every Sunday was our special day together, whether hiking, watching movies, or just talking about life over pancakes. I admittedly burned more often than not. When college acceptance letters arrived, I remember crying with pride. I had promised Sarah on her deathbed that I would ensure our daughter received the education she deserved, and I kept that promise, paying every cent of her tuition at Northwestern University. After graduation, Amanda landed a position at a prestigious marketing firm in Chicago. I could not have been prouder watching her walk across that stage in her cap and gown, knowing Sarah would have been beaming. Our relationship remained strong even as she built her independent life. She would call me several times a week, and we maintained our tradition of Sunday dinners whenever possible. Everything changed when Amanda met Jared at her workplace. He had transferred from the New York office, bringing with him an air of sophistication that immediately captivated my daughter. When she first brought him to meet me about 8 months into their relationship, something felt off. Jared greeted me with a limp handshake and barely concealed grimaces at my modest home. Despite my success in business, I had kept the same house where Amanda grew up, valuing memories over materialism. Jared came from old money, with family connections throughout the East Coast financial world. His father was an investment banker, and his mother chaired several charity boards. During that first dinner, he made numerous comments about my blue-collar success being so quaint and unexpected. Each time I swallowed my pride, focusing solely on how happy Amanda seemed. After they began dating seriously, I noticed Amanda visiting less frequently. Our Sunday tradition dwindled to once a month, then special occasions only. When we did speak, the conversation inevitably turned to Jared, his family connections, or the exclusive events they attended. I tried to maintain our connection, but increasingly felt like an outsider in her new world. Last Christmas Eve, Amanda and Jared arrived at my home with unexpected news. She flashed a massive diamond ring, announcing their engagement with tears of joy. Despite my reservations about Jared, I embraced them both, genuinely happy to see my daughter so excited. When discussion turned to wedding plans, I immediately offered to cover all expenses, suggesting a generous $75,000 budget. The wedding was scheduled for June, giving us 6 months to plan the perfect day. Initially, I was included in wedding planning meetings, though I felt increasingly uncomfortable with the way Jared and Amanda dismissed my suggestions. When Jared mentioned a venue costing nearly $30,000 alone, I expressed concern about the budget. Amanda quickly silenced me, saying, "Dad, please, we want this to be perfect." The undercurrent was clear: my role was to provide funding, not opinions. Things deteriorated further when Jared's mother, Barbara, arrived for a planning weekend. She systematically vetoed every idea I proposed while pushing for increasingly extravagant alternatives. When I suggested a reasonably priced caterer who had done amazing work for several of my business events, Barbara laughed audibly. "Amanda, you cannot expect your guests to eat food prepared by a strip mall chef," she said. To my shock, Amanda nodded in agreement, avoiding eye contact with me. The first major betrayal came when I discovered entirely by accident that I had not been invited to the cake tasting scheduled for that weekend. My neighbor Susan, whose daughter was doing some floral arrangements for the wedding, mentioned being excited about the tasting. When I called the bakery to confirm my attendance, they awkwardly explained that the reservation was for 3 people: Amanda, Jared, and Barbara. When confronted, Amanda dismissed it as a simple oversight. "Just a mix-up with the reservation, Dad," she said with a wave of her hand. But later that evening, I overheard Jared making a joke about my unsophisticated palate probably not being able to distinguish between grocery store cake and gourmet pastry. What wounded me deeply was hearing Amanda laugh in response. I told myself it was just wedding stress causing her to act out of character, but deep down I knew something had fundamentally changed. As wedding preparations intensified, I found myself excluded from more significant events. The venue tour, florist selection, and even the menu tasting all happened without my knowledge or input. Meanwhile, the checks I wrote grew larger with each passing week. When I asked Amanda about these decisions, she would provide vague responses claiming they were last-minute arrangements or insisting she had told me, but I must have forgotten. Our traditional father-daughter dinners ceased entirely. 3 times I made reservations at her favorite restaurant, and 3 times she canceled at the last minute with flimsy excuses. The final time I drove by Jared's apartment on my way home and saw her car parked outside, confirming my suspicion that these were not work emergencies as claimed. Even more alarming were the changes in Amanda herself. Her speech patterns shifted, adopting the clipped, somewhat condescending tone of Jared's family. She replaced her wardrobe with designer labels I had never heard of, and began referring to childhood friends as not really in our circle anymore. The daughter who once volunteered weekends at animal shelters now spent Saturdays at exclusive country club brunches, criticizing the service and decor. One evening, while dropping off some paperwork the wedding planner needed me to sign, I arrived at Barbara's house during what appeared to be an informal dinner party. From the foyer, I overheard Amanda sharing embarrassing stories from her childhood stories I had thought were precious memories between just us. She mocked my attempts at braiding her hair for school, laughed about how I once mistakenly packed dog biscuits instead of granola bars in her lunch, and mimicked my accent from growing up in rural Pennsylvania. The refined laughter that followed each anecdote felt like individual daggers to my heart. When I tried reconnecting with Amanda, suggesting a fishing trip like we used to take, she looked genuinely repulsed. "Dad, I have not been fishing since I was 12, she said with an eye roll. "Besides, I have a nail appointment with Barbara that day. We need to make sure our manicures complement each other in the wedding photos." Financial demands escalated alongside the social rejection. The budget ballooned from $75,000 to well over $120,000 within weeks. Amanda presented each new expense as absolutely essential, from imported flowers to custom monogrammed napkins that would be thrown away after a single use. When I expressed concern about the rapidly increasing costs, Amanda grew defensive and manipulative. "Dad, do you want me to have a cheap wedding everyone will talk about? Is that what Mom would have wanted?" she asked, weaponizing her mother's memory in a way she had never done before. The financial deception went beyond mere budget increases. While reviewing bank statements, I discovered Amanda had lied about several vendor costs. The photographer she claimed required a $15,000 deposit had actually only requested $8,000. The difference had been transferred to an account I did not recognize. When confronted, Amanda claimed it was a separate account for unexpected wedding costs, but refused to provide statements or details. The disrespect reached a breaking point during a dinner at my home. Jared's parents reluctantly agreed to attend, making their displeasure at my working-class neighborhood abundantly clear. Barbara ran her finger along my mantle, checking for dust, while Jared's father, Gregory, commented on the modesty of my television. "Amazing. You can even see the game on that tiny screen," he said, though my 55-inch TV was hardly small. Amanda, rather than defending the home she grew up in, joined in their criticism. "Dad refuses to upgrade anything," she told them, with an exaggerated sigh. "He still has some of the original furniture from when I was a kid. The worst part is he could afford much better. He just chooses to live like this." The collective judgment from the 3 of them made me feel like an intruder in my own home. Desperate to reconnect with my daughter before the wedding, I scheduled a heart-to-heart talk at our favorite local park. I brought along photo albums, documenting our life together, and a special gift, a bracelet that had belonged to her mother, which I had been saving for this occasion. Amanda arrived 40 minutes late. immediately apologizing that she could only stay for half an hour due to a dress fitting. Throughout our abbreviated time together, she remained distracted, checking her phone constantly and responding to texts. I tried expressing my concerns about both the wedding costs and her changing behavior. "Dad," she interrupted sharply, "this is my day, not yours. Just write the checks and stay in your lane. I do not need your input on how my wedding should look or who should be involved." Her words left me speechless, unable to recognize the compassionate daughter I had raised. The depth of social manipulation became clear when my best friend Thomas reluctantly showed me Amanda's social media accounts. There I found countless posts where she either mocked my appearance and mannerisms or intentionally cropped me out of family photos. In one particularly painful post, she had digitally removed me from her college graduation picture, replacing me with Jared as though he had been the one supporting her throughout her education. Even more disturbing were comments from Amanda claiming her father was too embarrassing to feature in her perfect social media aesthetic. On Jared's profile, I found references to me as the ATM and old money bags. In one exchange, they joked about how much they could extract for the wedding before I finally put my foot down. The casual cruelty of their conversations suggested this treatment had been going on for months, while I remained oblivious, writing checks and making excuses for my daughter's behavior. The final devastating blow arrived in an elegant envelope 3 weeks before the wedding. Inside was a formal invitation assigning me to table 19, far from the wedding party and immediate family. More shocking was the detailed program listing Gregory, Jared's father, as the one giving Amanda away. There was no mention of the father-daughter dance we had discussed, nor any acknowledgement of my role beyond presumably funding the entire event. I drove immediately to Amanda's apartment, invitation in hand, hoping desperately for an explanation that could make sense of this ultimate betrayal. The conversation that followed shattered any remaining illusions I had about our relationship. "I thought it would be obvious," she said coldly, when I showed her the invitation. "We need someone more presentable to give me away. Gregory has connections with everyone attending. He knows how to behave in front of important people." "But I am your father," I said, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. "I raised you alone after your mother died." Amanda's expression showed no empathy, only irritation at having to explain something she considered self-evident. "Dad," she sighed, "this wedding is about entering Jared's world. His family has gone out of their way to accept me despite my background. The least I can do is ensure the wedding meets their standards." When I asked directly if she was embarrassed by me, her hesitation told me everything before she even spoke. "It is not about being embarrassed," she eventually said. "It is about fitting in with my new life. You can either attend as a regular guest seated where we have placed you, or not come at all, but you will not ruin this day for me." I left her apartment in a daze, barely remembering the drive home. That night I sat in Amanda's childhood bedroom, surrounded by remnants of a relationship that apparently meant nothing to her anymore. A shelf still held trophies I had cheered, for photos captured moments of genuine happiness, and a box contained every birthday card she had ever given me. One from her 16th birthday read, "To the best dad in the world. I would be lost without you." Sleep eluded me as I grappled with how the daughter who wrote those words could become someone who saw me as an embarrassment to be hidden away. By morning, exhaustion had given way to clarity. I called Thomas, who had witnessed my struggle as a single father and knew Amanda since childhood. "It gets worse," Eric Thomas said reluctantly. He proceeded to tell me things about Jared I had not known, from his reputation for dating women from working-class backgrounds he considered beneath him, to rumors of substantial gambling debts hidden beneath his polished exterior. According to Thomas, several colleagues at Amanda's firm believed Jared had pursued her after learning about her successful father, who might solve his financial problems. Most surprisingly, Thomas revealed that despite their displays of wealth, Jared's family was facing serious financial difficulties. Gregory's investment firm was under investigation for irregularities, and several properties they claimed to own were mortgaged to the hilt. Their insistence on an extravagant wedding suddenly made perverse sense. They expected me to fund a showcase of wealth they could no longer afford. This information catalyzed my decision. I would not be used and disrespected by my daughter and her fiancé's family. Yet simple revenge would solve nothing. Instead, I formed a strategic response that would protect my financial interests while potentially giving Amanda a much-needed reality check. Over the next few days, I pretended to accept my diminished role in the wedding. I even sent a polite email to Barbara, confirming my attendance as a regular guest, which prompted a condescending response about being pleased I was being reasonable. Meanwhile, I methodically reviewed every contract I had signed for the wedding, as I suspected my name was on everything as the financially responsible party. Each vendor contract contained cancellation clauses, most requiring 50% payment if canceled within 30 days. This was significantly less than the 70% already paid on most contracts, meaning vendors would actually need to return money. I consulted briefly with my attorney, who confirmed that legally, as the contracting party, I had every right to make changes or cancellations regardless of whose event it was. Before executing my plan, I set aside $50,000 in a trust for Amanda. Despite everything, she was still my daughter, and I wanted her to have resources if she ever recognized how she had been manipulated. The trust had specific conditions, including completing family counseling, which I hoped might eventually rebuild what we had lost. Over 2 days, I systematically contacted every vendor. To the venue caterer, photographer, florist, band, and even the transportation company, I explained that unfortunately the wedding was canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. Most were understanding, especially when I insisted on paying the cancellation fees immediately. Several even offered to work with me in the future, appreciating my professionalism. My final step was ensuring that neither Amanda nor Jared's family could swoop in at the last minute to reinstate the contracts. To the venue manager, who had been particularly helpful, I mentioned concerns about potential fraudulent use of my information, suggesting they require photo identification for any changes. For good measure, I had my bank flag any large withdrawals for verification and temporarily froze the dedicated wedding account after transferring the remaining funds back to my primary account. With arrangements canceled and my finances secured, I left for a long-planned fishing trip to northern Michigan. I turned off my phone, knowing the storm that would erupt when Amanda and Jared discovered what had happened. For 3 days, I found peace by a lake, coming to terms with the painful reality of my daughter's transformation, while reminding myself of the father I had always striven to be. When I returned home and finally turned on my phone, I found 67 missed calls, over 100 text messages, and countless voicemails, ranging from confused to threatening. From friends who had attended what was supposed to be the wedding, I learned exactly what had transpired in my absence. Amanda and Jared had arrived at the venue with their wedding party for final preparations, only to find the doors locked. The venue manager, recognizing Amanda from previous visits, reluctantly informed her that the wedding had been canceled by the contract holder days earlier. Frantic calls to other vendors confirmed the same story. Everything from flowers to catering to the DJ had been canceled. According to my neighbor, who had been invited, the scene quickly deteriorated into chaos. Amanda, still in her preparation robe, had a complete meltdown in the parking lot, screaming about sabotage and betrayal. Jared immediately called his parents, assuming they could quickly reinstate everything with their supposedly vast resources. The guests, already arriving for the ceremony, gathered in confused clusters as conflicting information spread. The most revealing moment came when Jared's father admitted they could not cover the costs to save the wedding. His exact words, overheard by several guests, were, "You know we cannot do that right now. Just tell everyone." There was a mix-up with the venue. One guest had even recorded parts of the unfolding disaster, though I could not bring myself to watch more than a few seconds of Amanda's tearful rage. By evening, most guests had retreated to a hastily arranged gathering at Jared's apartment, where blame was placed squarely on the incompetent vendors rather than acknowledging my role. However, suspicions clearly existed, as evidenced by the increasingly threatening tone of the voicemails I received from both Amanda and Jared's family. The direct confrontation came the following day, when Amanda appeared at my door, still wearing her wedding dress, now stained and torn at the hem. Her makeup was smeared from crying, but her eyes blazed with fury as she launched into accusations before I could even invite her inside. "How could you do this to me?" she screamed. "You ruined the most important day of my life, out of pure selfishness." I remained calm, inviting her to sit down, which she refused. Instead of offering explanations, I silently played a recording of our last conversation, where she had told me I could either attend as a regular guest or not come at all. I followed this with screenshots of her social media posts mocking me, and finally copies of forged signatures I had discovered on attempts to access additional funds from my business accounts. As evidence of her betrayal mounted, Amanda's rage gave way to shocked silence. The final piece I showed her was proof of Jared's previously undisclosed gambling debts, along with text messages between him and a friend discussing how marrying Amanda would solve his financial problems, thanks to her naive, "Father, I did not cancel your wedding to hurt you, Amanda," I told her quietly. "I canceled it because I refused to pay for an event where I am treated as nothing more than an ATM. I refuse to fund a celebration of your entry into a family that has lied to you as much as you have lied to me." Amanda collapsed onto the couch, her wedding dress billowing around her like a defeated cloud. Then, between sobs, the truth emerged. Jared had already abandoned her, blaming her for not controlling her father better. After my cancellations were discovered, he had raged at her for ruining everything, revealing a cruelty she had never witnessed before. When the expensive show could not go on, his family had quickly retreated, making it clear that without the lavish wedding and my financial backing, Amanda no longer held any value to them. Within days, Amanda learned even more painful truths. 3 of Jared's ex-girlfriends contacted her, describing identical patterns of isolation, from family financial exploitation and eventual abandonment. His gambling debts were far worse than even I had discovered, with loan sharks making threatening calls to Amanda's cell phone looking for Jared, who had apparently fled to stay with a cousin in another state. Most telling was the complete disappearance of Barbara and Gregory, who blocked Amanda's number and social media accounts without explanation. The social circle that had seemed so important vanished overnight, with former friends from their world, making it clear that Amanda was no longer welcome at their gatherings. Amanda's initial reaction was overwhelming anger, directed primarily at me as the most accessible target. For nearly a week, she alternated between rage-filled tirades and devastated silence. I maintained my boundaries while ensuring she had a safe place to process her emotions. I did not offer to solve her problems or shield her from consequences, but I did make it clear that I would be present when she was ready to rebuild her life with honesty. Slowly, painfully, she began recognizing the manipulation she had fallen victim to. In a particularly vulnerable moment, she admitted that her behavior had begun changing after Jared subtly but consistently pointed out ways her background might embarrass her in his social circles. What started as small adjustments to please him grew into a complete rejection of her past, including me. "I still love you," I told her. "But love does not mean allowing someone to treat you with disrespect. It does not mean funding your poor decisions without question. Sometimes love means standing firm when someone you care about is headed for destruction." The healing process between Amanda and me began with painful honesty. For weeks, we occupied the same house as virtual strangers, crossing paths in hallways with cautious politeness. I focused on my business, while also attending therapy sessions to process the betrayal by my only child. Meanwhile, Amanda found a temporary administrative position at a local business her prestigious marketing career in Chicago abandoned after her dramatic departure. Gradually, small moments of genuine connection emerged. I found Amanda one evening, looking through old photo albums, tears streaming silently down her face. Another day, she left a cup of coffee outside my home office, prepared exactly as I like it. These wordless gestures preceded the conversations that would eventually rebuild our relationship. The turning point came approximately 2 months after the canceled wedding. Amanda asked if we could talk, and for 3 hours she spoke without defensiveness about her actions. She did not blame Jared entirely, instead taking responsibility for choices that had hurt me deeply. I could have said no to him. At any point, she acknowledged, but I was so afraid of losing what I thought was my chance at an impressive life that I was willing to sacrifice what actually mattered. I shared my own reflections as well, acknowledging that perhaps my focus on providing financially had sometimes overshadowed teaching her about character and values. We both recognized patterns that had contributed to the painful situation without excusing the genuine betrayal that had occurred. From that conversation, we established new boundaries for our relationship. Amanda would not return to living with me permanently, but would stay until she could afford her own place. She would not ask for financial support beyond the temporary housing, instead working to build her independence. Most importantly, we would commit to complete honesty, even when uncomfortable. Amanda sought professional help for the insecurities that had made her vulnerable to manipulation. Through therapy, she began recognizing how her unresolved grief for her mother had manifested as a desperate need for approval, particularly from Jared's mother figure. She worked through feelings of unworthiness that had led her to believe she needed to change herself to be accepted. Our relationship found new footing through a community project. The local youth center needed renovation, and my construction company volunteered to lead the effort. Amanda offered to coordinate volunteers, applying her marketing skills to a worthy cause rather than corporate climbing. Working side by side with a shared purpose began healing wounds that conversations alone could not touch. My own life expanded in unexpected ways during this period of reconciliation. At 40, I began dating again, meeting Catherine, a widow with a teenage son, through the youth center project. Her straightforward nature and emotional maturity were refreshing after years of either solitude or manipulation. Amanda initially struggled with seeing me build a relationship, but eventually formed her own connection with Catherine, recognizing another source of female guidance in her life. 6 months after the wedding disaster, Amanda secured a marketing position with a small but growing local company. The role offered less prestige than her Chicago position, but provided genuine satisfaction and growth potential. She found an affordable apartment nearby and moved out of my home this time with a proper goodbye and plans for regular dinners. Perhaps the most surprising development came 8 months after the canceled wedding. Through industry connections, Amanda learned that Jared had attempted his same manipulative pattern with another financially comfortable family, only to be exposed when the father recognized him from social media posts about the wedding. Fiasco. Jared's carefully constructed facade had crumbled entirely, forcing him to take a modest job in his uncle's insurance office in New Jersey. True to her word of taking responsibility, Amanda worked weekend shifts at a local restaurant in addition to her marketing job, saving until she could repay $20,000 of the wedding expenses. When she presented me with the check, I initially refused, but she insisted. "This is not about the money, Dad," she explained. "This is about showing you that I understand the value of what you have always provided, not just financially, but in terms of unwavering support." Our newly established traditions better reflected authentic connection rather than obligation. Instead of formal dinners where conversation remained superficial, we enjoyed hiking trips where deeper discussions flourished naturally. Amanda joined me in volunteer construction projects, discovering a satisfaction in physical work and tangible results that her previous social climbing had never provided. The experience transformed my approach to all relationships. I became more attentive to early warning signs of dishonesty or manipulation, setting clearer boundaries with business associates and friends alike. Having nearly lost my daughter to toxic influence, I now valued genuine connections with greater appreciation. For Amanda, the painful experience stripped away pretense and forced authentic self-examination. The daughter who returned to me was not the same as before meeting Jared, nor was she the person she had become during their relationship. Instead, she emerged as a more grounded, thoughtful woman who understood both her vulnerabilities and her strengths. She built new friendships based on shared values rather than status, creating a social circle that celebrated rather than criticized her background. Through this difficult journey, I have learned that true parental love sometimes requires allowing painful consequences rather than constant protection. Sometimes the most loving action is not writing another check or making another excuse, but instead stepping back to let reality provide its harsh but necessary lessons. Genuine love acknowledges that growth often requires discomfort, even heartbreak. The trust I established for Amanda remains untouched, waiting for the day when she might need it for education, a home purchase, or other meaningful investment in her future. When that day comes, I will know she is requesting support from a place of authenticity rather than entitlement. For anyone facing similar painful family dynamics, I would say this: maintaining your self-respect does not mean abandoning love. Setting boundaries is not the same as cutting ties. True reconciliation becomes possible only when both parties acknowledge reality and commit to change, but that process cannot begin until you refuse to participate in your own mistreatment. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to stop enabling someone you love? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of family challenges and healing. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to reconciliation. Remember that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most meaningful growth. I wish you wisdom and courage in your own relationships.